Tonight on the pod, it's another night of a conference preview. Tonight, we're going down to the Great American Conference, a conference that has a really talented top echelon and top tier of the conference. The depth of the conference is something we're going to talk about a lot tonight. Joining me tonight, Drew Carpenter. What's up, fella?
How you doing, Kobe? It's great to have another week to go over some good football teams.
Hell yeah, it is, my friend. And who else to get started with tonight than the team that I think historically has been on the top of this conference, the Harding Bisons. We got a couple Bison to talk about tonight. The Harding Bisons, though, the ones that I think the national stage has been introduced to over the last couple of years. Obviously, national championship in 2023, very much still as a national contender as long as Paul Simmons is leading the charge. He's led this team since 2017, and in that time, Drew, 77-14 overall record for Simmons at the helm of this program, and it gets better from there. He is the fastest coach in Harding history to 50 wins, and he gave us probably one of the best quotes of that 2023 season going through that playoff run. A lot of people question the offense from this Harding squad. He responds just how you think he would. He says, quote, "Running the flex bone is pretty good if you care about winning." That was after the 55-14 win over Lenore Ryan in what I believe was the national semifinal, quarter or semifinal. And I think that summarizes Harding and the identity that the guys have over there in Searcy, Arkansas very, very well. When you look at this team, you look at the transfer portal. Again, all of our information and data from the transfer portal, courtesy of Athlink. They do a great job of compiling all this data for us so we can go through and find some of these information. This shows 17 players at one point or another in the portal. Few starters on the defensive side of the ball, especially going to be leaving for the Bisons this fall. What they're bringing in, though, this one was kind of an interesting back and forth. Marcus Hansen, he's the former NSIC Defensive Player of the Year from Bemidji State. Following 24 season, he transfers out of Bemidji. That was pretty big news in the D2 landscape. We find out he's going to Harding, can potentially be a force for this Bison's defense. Back in June, though, that was when the announcement came out. Now, he's back in the Northern Sun. He just committed to play at Minnesota State. So not sure what happened in the meantime there, why he's out at Harding, not going to be a part of the defensive attack. They've got 5 D1 bounce backs coming to Searcy after not seeing much time at their previous schools like Oklahoma State and Oklahoma, just being a couple of those. So some in-state guys taking that opportunity. And then I think it kind of highlights this incoming class as well. Former all-conference NAI defensive back coming in from Roosevelt, Joey Mahop, who was the first player in Lakers history to be named an NAI All-American back in 2023. So definitely addressing the defensive side of the ball. It's going to be one of their biggest concerns for this Bison's team. But going into the 2025 season, talking about this squad that is very closely removed from the national stage and national contention, you talk about the offense, and I kind of hinted at it earlier with the flex bone. The way that they run their offense has been the talk of a lot of different outlets. They bring back a lot of production in that room. The top 2 backs return to deal some damage out of the flex bone. It's Andrew Miller, Braden Jay. Those two have combined to do a lot of damage for this Harding team. 2,000 yards and almost 30 touchdowns a year ago just between the two of those guys. And these guys are a great combination of, obviously, in the flex bone, the triple option style of offense. You're not going to be hitting a home run every time. These guys, Braden Jay especially, home run hitter. A guy out of the backfield that can make something out of nothing. And then you look, of course, at the quarterback for this team, too, a pivotal part of that triple option attack. He's back under center. Cole Keeline, who we had a chance to have on the show way back when, it feels like. And that all bodes very well for this Bison squad. Dre Hall is a big loss out of the pass rush portion of this defense, along with that defensive lineman Gage Price. But leading tackler Clark Griffin, he's back to lead that unit defensively. He was a big mainstay of that piece in 2024. And the second team All-American last year, D2Football.com Elite 100, he had 110 tackles last season for this squad. So safe to say he'll be a difference maker coming back. But tell me about give me their best competition going into this upcoming year, Drew.
Yeah, I think Harding, obviously, you're going to get everybody's best shot, especially when you have been so successful. And another thing, Kobe, just to touch on that offense real quick. You know, Navy and Army, they run a lot of triple option as well, and they do that to deceive people because they might not be the most talented teams in D1. But when you're one of the most talented teams in D2 and you're able to run that style offense, good luck.
Yeah.
But let's move next to the Ouachita Baptist Tigers. Another strong year for the Tigers. They capped off a massive win. They did beat that Harding team, proving that they can hang with the best teams in the country. However, their season ended in an overtime loss to Central Oklahoma. But Ouachita is not looking to necessarily like, oh, we just lost a little heartbreaker. We're gonna have rebuild and go to the drawing board. They're here to stay. They want to let everyone know that they do lose a couple of key guys, such as all conference kickers are people too. Tom Weston.
Hell yeah.
They lose quarterback Eli Livingston, who we posted last year when he caught what was it, the trick play to win against Harding,
trick play. I think that gave them the lead, I want to say, in that Harding game, which was kind of a back and forth slugfest.
Absolutely. And then you lose two key guys as well. A guy that can pound the rock and Kendall Givens, and a guy that's a leader, a stopper, and Dawson Miller linebacker. So losing quarterback and two key guys on offense obviously isn't great, but there's a couple guys that you can bring in to replace that. A couple questions I would just look at is just like losing your starting quarterback. Like where do you go from there? Okay, obviously that's a huge factor. I think in any offense, whether it's college, NFL, whatever. So obviously that's a huge thing. And then how do you respond after a heartbreaking loss? You're inches away from a deep postseason run potentially. You'd beaten the number one team in the country. How do you come back from that? We've seen multiple teams, whether it be NFL or college football, high college football, or just D2 teams, where it's like they're so close, they have a heartbreaking loss, and then the next year they just don't have that same fuel to the fire. So I do believe Ouachita's capable of it. So definitely seeing where that is. And then as far as a couple guys that could come back and really help them out, I would look at Nate Tenbarge. He got some time last year, couple games. I believe it was roughly like 8 games that he was playing last year. So look to him to potentially step into that role left by Eli. And then lastly, defensive back Stephen Weston, returning playmaker in the secondary, and they need a leader. Not saying they don't have anybody, but when you lose a guy like Dawson Miller, it doesn't matter what position group it comes from. You need a guy that's going to step up and be a dog, and that could be that guy.
100%, man. I think someone also worth mentioning, you talk about this squad and I think recent success with this team. When you look on the other side of the ball, man, Josiah Johnson, the Cliff Harris Award winner from last year at the Division II level, a guy that was another mainstay for this defense. You have to go out and, again, we always talk about you can't just replace these guys. You don't go out and replace that. But what you can try and do is to pull a money ball on you. What did they say? Try and replace them in the aggregate.
Yeah, I think if you're going to put it in Moneyball, right, you got to replace them with potentially multiple guys, right?
You got to.
And at the end of the day, there's nothing wrong with that. Last time I checked, Usain Bolt ran by himself, but football players and football teams are built with 11 guys on the field at one time. So at the end of the day, you're going to have multiple guys that are going to need to step up to replace somebody. That's the nature of the game. So
I like that. I like that a lot, dude. Let's go and shift over. Then another team that I think really is poised to be at the top of this conference coming into this year. They've proven it the last 2 years, that being Southern Arkansas, the Mule Riders. Under Brady Smiley, his third year at the helm, it went pretty damn well. The last 2 years have been a roller coaster and a very good one at that for this SAU team. They have tied the program record for most wins in back-to-back years. That goes back to 1952. For this program. It's been a long time coming, I think is a very easy way of saying it for this squad to show that they're back at what really could be the peak of where their program is right now. Now, with that being said, this is the current peak. Does that mean they can't go out and reset the peak and reset the standard for this program this coming year? Absolutely not. What I am going to tell you, though, as I go through some of this breakdown of this, a lot of question marks around this team going into 2025, and not necessarily because of the transfer portal. I think that's the first thing that jumps out about this squad. The transfer portal has not bitten this team as it has others in the conference, as it has others across the country. According to Athlink, we see only 2 reported transfers leaving SAU. That's a number that in today's day and age is unparalleled. That's something that you do not typically see right about now. On the addition side, they bring in 4 FCS transfers, 2 offensive linemen, East Texas A&M, Central Arkansas, respectively. They get a tight end and a defensive lineman addition from Stephen F. Austin. And where it gets tough for this squad, 17 all GAC conference selections just a year ago. But this is where it starts to get interesting. Their conference player of the year, Judd Barton, not coming back in 2025 per their updated roster. That's a huge hit for them. A guy who can do it on the ground, through the air. Obviously, the accolades speak for themselves. An All-American, D2 football, Elite 100 type of guy. Defensive end, Hunter Hewitt, is definitely a man to watch. He needs to be a defensive force for that side of the football because you look on that side, what they lose is Dawson Scott. And that's one of the big questions going into this season. How do you generate pressure on the quarterback when you lose a guy like Dawson Scott who was able to generate double-digit number sacks and probably way more than that pressures if you go back through and watch the tape on a guy like that? Also, offensive backfield, your top 3 rushers are gone. That's not something a lot of teams have to deal with. Unfortunately, they're in that boat. Who steps up in the offensive backfield for this Mule Rider squad? And then can they sustain this level of success, right? Is this a program that is a flash in the pan? We talked about it's been a while since they've had this level of success in back-to-back seasons. Can they maintain that? Can they turn it into 3, 4, 5 down the road, turn this into a Harding, into a Ouachita, into even a Henderson, these kind of squads that we've come to familiarize ourselves with in the top 25? I think they can. This is a prove-it year, though, for Coach Smiley and company down there, because can they do it without the star-studded lineup and roster they've had in years past? I do have a fun one for you here, though, Drew. The defense for this squad, they held their final opponent of the season last year, Northwest Oklahoma State, -2 passing yards in the last game of the year last year. That is just... That's like just downright demoralizing. I think they beat them also like 70-0 and set a conference record for points.
I don't know how defensively you can do that, to be completely honest with you.
That's incredible.
I think that's one of those mind-boggling stats to where that's almost like Russell Westbrook triple doubles. Like, will that ever happen again? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I don't understand how, with the amount of offense and explosion teams have in today's day and age. That's a credit to Coach Smiley.
And it wasn't a Harding team. It wasn't a triple option team. Even if it were, by the way, it'd still be incredibly impressive. But
absolutely, that's a credit to Coach Smiley in the program he's built. And obviously, like we had talked about, Kobe, they're looking to continue to grow.
Yeah, 100%. Another good one for you, though. Off the field, what they've been able to do. #1 in the nation for Division II football programs with their community service hours. 2,721 community service hours last year. Out of 162 D2 football programs, they finished first in the country when it came to community service. It certainly isn't going to necessarily bring you more wins in the fall, but that's something that you can hang your hat on as a coach, as a player, as anyone involved with this program, that you've got to be making some meaningful connections doing that kind of work in your community. And I say that's not going to bring you wins. What it definitely will bring is meaningful fans, meaningful connections, and kind of relationships inside of that community. You have to imagine that something like that will pay dividends for them moving forward, dude.
Who's tracking that? That's an interesting
That's a great question. I think that's on maybe a school by school basis, but I'm sure the NCAA has a record because they do compete. I know a lot of that is through the SAC. The Student Athlete Advisory Committee, they track a lot of those numbers as well.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, absolutely congratulations. That's something that community service is something that's great, and obviously it gets something to where people want to come see you play because they know you, right? And so
3,000 hours?
Yeah, that's wild. Like that's
I want to know. I kind of want to know who led the charge on that, like player wise, like who had the most out of the guys. That'd be pretty cool.
Another credit to Coach Smiley. So let's touch on Henderson State, the Reddies, if I am correct.
Oh, yeah.
The Reddies.
Oh yeah,
absolutely. They stay ready, ain't got to get ready, right? A model of consistency. Like the last 4 years, Henderson State very successful. They're putting up about 8 wins a season, sometimes 9, and it's like that's consistency. That's great. However, you see, Kobe, that they went 8-3 last year. All 3 of those were against ranked opponents in the national D2 tier that we had just talked about. So you got a strong returning core. The Reddies are going to try to look to, you win one of those games, you might get in playoff contention, right? We know how the Division II playoff works, where it's like if you go 9-2 with a ranked win, maybe a Harding or maybe a Ouachita State, you could be instantly in that playoff discussion. So I guarantee Henderson State's looking for that. Key returners, a couple of guys. Andrew Edwards, very, very experienced, very, very good as far as the overall quarterback. Jeremiah Davis, good running back. Caden Davis, tight end. That's another guy. And then a couple guys in defense I also want to touch on. Jordan Owens as well as Jacoby Shell. Kobe, this guy's Henderson State, a lot of guys returning, a lot of guys that have a ton of experience, and expect big things out of them.
Yeah. 100%. You look forward to, we usually talk a lot about the 2025 schedules and kind of these previews too. But what you'll notice, Drew, when you look through these schedules, there's no non-conference. I mean, the GAC is built so that every team is just playing each other. And from what I can tell,
look at those a lot of night games.
What's that?
A lot of night games. Look at those first 4. They're expecting.
Yes, dude. I noticed that as well. 6 and then a 7, another 2 more 6 p.m. games to start the year. That's actually pretty wild. Back to back to back to back.
That's how you get turned up right immediately. We all know, like, in college football, I feel like, especially like some teams, like Northwood didn't have lights. So like when you finally get to play those like night games, it's a different atmosphere.
Yeah. No, 100%. But you talked about a lot of those returners. They do. They have a ton of guys in place that feel like they should be ready to go. I mean, as early as obviously week 1. Nearly 70% of the roster from a year ago is back, Drew. And again, this is an 8-3 team we're talking about, and an offense that really lit up Division II. Caden Davis, you talked about him, D2 CCA All-Region First Team honors. The offensive line is a big piece of that. They stay mostly intact. It's a little bit harder to track some of those statistics and numbers, but what you can tell is that unit has been very, very important for them. And this is something that, Coach Holes has brought a lot of stability right into this program away. He was promoted after 7 seasons as a defensive coordinator, so has worked his way up internally inside of this program. They signed 37 players in February, including 16 from Arkansas. It's the most in-state signees since 2021. A couple other statistics for you there. And that you kind of said the rest of it, man. I think it's a really good deal. Some of that information also courtesy of our friends at D2 College Football Spotlight on Twitter. They do a good job highlighting a bunch of these programs. But we kind of covered what I would call the top tier of the conference, right, when it comes to the GAC. Let's get into those other squads that certainly are going to try and be in the hunt, who can separate themselves this year. Let's talk about East Central. The way the Tigers are trying to separate themselves, not necessarily on the field. Before I talk about some of those additions they're making heading into 2025, what you need to know about this squad is the news that they broke very recently, Drew, concerning their locker room. I'm sure if you guys follow us on social media, you've already seen it, but these proposed upgrades to the ECU locker room down there are outrageous. Substantial gifts. They got the ball moving on what is now estimated to be a $2.3 million upgrade to this facility that features 140 lockers, individual LED screens for each athlete. You can kind of see they just have the logos on there right now, but that would have the individual player, the stats, position, those kind of things you'd imagine. Refreshed athletic training room. You see the hot and cold tubs right there. You've got the big TVs mounted, the pool tables, the ping pong, and then I think the equipment room as well is getting a bunch of upgrades as well. You look through these renders, dude, who at the D2 level competes with this level of facility? Grand Valley definitely jumps to mind right away. I know Delta State has a new locker room that was looking really solid. I mean, but off the top of your head, man, not many.
The way I see it is I know a podcast of people that enjoy going to do campus tours, and I'm sure that they would love to do this campus tour, and we can just go to the locker room and hang out in there
Yeah.
and just play some college football, anything like that, and just forget the rest. Let's just hang out in there. That's awesome. I think that's something to where, like, in a way, we were all athletes first. We all understand that, like, if you have cool things, you're gonna attract cool people, right? Like, and when it comes to recruiting, that's a great recruiting tool. And as far as like being an athlete on the team already, there's something about it to where it's just like, okay, this is awesome. I'm comfortable. You talked about the tubs, and then you talked about also, like, I feel like as a college athlete, the locker room, like being one of those guys, like within the guys, people aren't going to want to leave there. They're going to want to hang out.
Yep.
So that's a cool spot.
People talk a lot about third place, what they call it, like home, work, or home and school, kind of being those two places. What's your third place? What's your place that you go to in between when you're not at either of those spots? And for a lot of guys that maybe are, whether they're commuters or guys off campus or, otherwise, you're not trying to go back and forth from the crib to the locker room to the field, whatever that is, to class. You need somewhere to crash during the day between classes. Go into the locker room, get your treatment taken care of, go get your whatever needs sorted. But I will give them credit as well. I've been following along with their socials. It seems like they've got a really solid core group of guys that's bought into this summer conditioning and summer programming. That's huge. If you want to go take the next step in a conference like the GAC, you need to have guys bought in. Not in August and September. You need them bought in June and July. Those are the months for D2 football where the best teams separate themselves. Harding has been doing a very, very good job of that. They're some of the best in the country of keeping guys, the retention through the summers. That's what East Central is trying to emulate here. They do bring in 2 all-conference NAI guys, wide receiver Zach Fuller, from Nelson University, and then DB Alon Woodbury out of Missouri Valley. 3 incoming transfers from the FCS level that all saw snaps at their previous institutions. These weren't guys that were riding pine at the last spot, Drew. They're coming in and they're going to make a difference right away.
Hey, we talk about it. We've talked about a couple of schools before that use the portal a lot. Nothing better to when it's like we're trying to win now, we're trying to improve now. Get guys that would like immediate snaps under their belt. They've had that experience. They know how to take an install. They know what to look for in film. Little things like that.
100%. Tell
Okay.
me about the Wonder Boys, potentially the best name in sports.
Wonder Boys. At first, when you hear it, you might think it's a band, but it is a football team. It's Arkansas Tech. Arkansas Tech this past 2 years, back-to-back 5 and 6 seasons. But it's one of those to where it's like, Kobe, I don't know, like for me at Northwood, we went 5 and 6 my last year there, and we could tell that like we were 2 plays away from being
Right? Yeah.
6 and 5. We're 2 plays away from being, or 3 plays away from being 7 and 4. So the Wonder Boys, absolutely, they're thinking that. I'm looking at 15 players to the portal. Okay, but you're bringing in 10 guys from the portal as well. So it's not necessarily a one-for-one type of thing. And obviously coaches don't look at it like that. Like, oh, we lost an offensive lineman. We got to go get the same offensive lineman. They're looking for the best players.
Absolutely, yeah.
But key returners for them, Deuce Wise. He was close to 1,000 yards rushing a year ago. Expect him to definitely like be explosive, physical runner, and a key part of that engine in the offense. And then Jaron Stewart, the linebacker, same thing. Very successful season last year. I believe it was 70-plus tackles a season ago. You and I both know whether it's high school, whether it's college, whatever it is, you're looking to always get 1% better. And if he gets 1% better, then expect him to get even more better on the field next year, right? 1% better every day. And I think that's what Arkansas Tech's definitely looking towards. But, as someone who has had an experiment with a new coach coming into our locker room with Coach Buer coming in at Northwood, it's all about buy-in. And Roy Thompson's coming into his first year as the Wonder Boys head coach, had a great run as the Ouachita Baptist
There
head
you go. There you go.
DC. Almost had me. But yeah, absolutely. Like when you got a guy and then they can tell from, hey, we played against this guy. We know he's good. We know he's successful. Boom. There's no necessarily like, oh, do we think he's got it? Do we think? But there has to be buy-in. And so I think that's a huge part of what's going to happen with the Wonder Boys.
Yeah, man, you talk about their head coach, and that's something that has been really the talking point for them coming into this season. And when you go back and look a little bit at the history of Roy Thompson Jr. here, you talked about it. His experience at Ouachita most recently, 2018 to 2024, co-defensive coordinator. Before that, he was a 5-time GAC champion. I mean, this is a guy who's experienced a lot of success at the D2 level. Ouachita, under his watch, was really running for a large part the GAC during that time. 5 NCAA playoff appearances this guy has been a part of in that capacity. He knows how to get to that next level, and that's exactly what this Arkansas Tech team needs moving forward. His defense in 2024 was 5th in Division II in scoring. Drew, they only allowed 12 points per game. You have to imagine he's going to be very, very involved with the play calling on that side of the ball. They held Harding, the number 1 team in the country, to 13 points that year. You talked about it, 288 total yards. Talk about that Ouachita win. And they were the top 10, in the top 10, for D2 scoring defense in 2018, 19, 22, and 23. You talk about
Kobe,
flash in the pan. That's anything but. That is sustained success.
Kobe, in the way I see it, there, a lot of schools, like for us, it was when Coach B came to Northwood, he hadn't played Findlay before. He hadn't played Saginaw Valley yet before. This guy's played the teams in the conference before.
Great
It's
point.
not like, hey, what do they run? What do they? I've seen it. He's seen it. He's been in that conference forever. And I think that's a huge factor and a huge part to be like, all right, now this can help me succeed, because I might not have the same players. I might not be in the same stadium, and I might not be wearing the same jerseys, but I've seen these guys on the opposite sideline. So I think that's a huge part.
He's been an architect of one of the best programs in recent history of that conference. Can he do it again? Can he repeat that, like you said, with a change of scenery? But to move things forward, let's stay in Arkansas. Monticello, they're bringing in 6 different D1 bounce backs, Drew. They give the second chance opportunity kind of a new meaning to some of those guys that didn't see many snaps at the previous schools. They're losing what looks like it could be as many as 7 defensive starters from last year. That's a big blow for this squad, the Weevils. And the quarterback, their best playmaker, Demion Brown, played his last year in 2024. He was also the team's leading rusher just a year ago. And, I mean, that's a really tough blow. He earned himself an invite to the Raiders rookie minicamp, though. That's a tough deal to replace a playmaker like that. And so this team is going to have a lot more question marks than answers heading into the 2025 season. Can they answer a lot of those? Absolutely. But losing a guy like him at under center is a really tough piece. This is going to be a prove-it year for head coach Jackson and company. The guys need to step into some new roles. 2025, he'll be year 14 for Coach Jackson at the head coach position. He also serves as their director of athletics over there for the Weevils. You don't see that, I think, very often at the Division II level, a guy that can be the head coach and also kind of the AD. It happens here or there, definitely at the smaller schools. But again, this is a lot of question marks around this team going into the fall. They have a lot of guys they've lost to graduation. Of course, I mentioned it, a lot of guys to the portal. This is a guy that's been here for the long run. He knows about the turnover of this team and how to prepare them for success in the future. Can he do it and dig himself out of what I think is a little bit of a hole right now and a little bit of a lack of talent when you lose this surplus of guys to the portal and to graduation? Only time will tell. But that's kind of the short bit on Arkansas Monticello.
Absolutely. Kobe, let's talk a little bit about Southeastern Oklahoma State. They started the year hot. Finished 2024, though, with 3 straight losses to finish at 5-6. We talk a lot at Kobe about like this conference, and we're like, oh, there's those top teams, but there's also those middle of the pack teams where it's like you're a couple plays away. We just talked about it with the Wonder Boys. Like you can imagine within that locker room when you're 5-3, you're riding high, and then all of a sudden, boom, you're 5-6, and you're like, what happened?
Yep.
You know what I mean? It's one of those where it's like, wow, like how did we do that? 18 players enter the transfer portal. 5 players returning. That's obviously not necessarily a good thing unless they, you get the only good thing I believe that the transfer portal has is obviously people get to go and have their own opportunities, but sometimes you're able to like get necessarily like cancers off the team where it's just like, hey, you didn't buy in, we don't want you anymore.
Yep.
Right. So like that could have been a factor. Unsure about that, but they do bring 5 players in. So another thing, and I just think that with this conference, running the ball is a very, very big thing. DJ Brown, and as a runner, very good runner for Oklahoma State, Southeastern Oklahoma State, not the Cowboys, but Southeastern Oklahoma State.
There you go. There you go.
Yep, had to make sure. And then finally, again, I'm going to hit it on the head as well. And I think it's a very important position, obviously, defensively, because like the quarterback is the leader and proposed leader, not necessarily always the most vocal guy or anything like that. Defensively, we all know that like there's usually a linebacker that's a leader. It's just one of those positions in sports that like they're probably a leader on the team. And so when you look at Braden Winters, who's coming off a very successful season, expect him to not only continue what he did, but up his game. So absolutely, Southeastern Oklahoma State, it's one of those teams like we talked about, Kobe. You could get hot, and they started 5-3 last year. You never know what could happen.
Other side of the state, Southwestern Oklahoma State, 3-8 in 2024. 16 players at the portal. Doesn't seem like they're missing a whole lot of key contributors, quote unquote, on either side of the ball, but definitely always hurts. 16 guys in the portal. Possibly biggest blow. QB Kai Kunz, unfortunately, medically retiring following the 2024 season. He was also their leading rusher by a large margin. That was only his sophomore season. So to lose a guy like Kunz after the 24 season, that's a really tough blow for this team. Seemed like he was poised to be the quarterback and the guy of the future for this offensive attack moving forward. But on the other side of the ball, Matthew Miles is another guy to be excited about. Defensive lineman coming in from USF, formerly Mississippi Valley State. You look back at that quarterback room, Chandra Galbin, hopefully pronouncing that one correctly, will likely be in the mix at quarterback heading into the fall, along with the former LSU preferred walk-on, Knox Dyson. He's transferring and joining the squad this fall. Last year was the first season under head coach Andrew Rice. He's looking to build in 2025. He's got previous GAC experience. He was the offensive coordinator at Southern Arkansas. So you talk about Coach Roy earlier on, another guy who's got great GAC experience, has experienced success inside of this conference, is going to one of those middle tier type universities or schools inside of the conference to see if he can replicate and reproduce that, Drew.
Yeah, it's a great point, Kobe. And as we move to Southern Nazarene, a team who went 3-8 last year, but a massive upset win against Ouachita Baptist. That's a key point of what we're talking about this entire conference. You're one win away from not necessarily like making your season, but proving that you guys belong. And so not many losses to the portal. But as far as the incoming freshman class, 75 players, which people should better be wearing name tags on their first day of practice because there's no way you'd be able to name all those guys. Those are supposed to be your best friends for life. But start 2025 with a couple of tough matchups at Henderson State and then Southern Arkansas week 2. Quarterback Bryson Evans. Watch out for him, Kobe. I think he makes the offense go. Ran for 600 yards, threw for over 1,000 last year. They're losing a couple of his targets, but at the end of the day, as a quarterback, like we had talked about with previous guys in other conferences, get him the ball. Let's see what he can do. Okay. And then Carter Brock is a name to know for the Crimson Storm defense. Going into a senior season, talk about a guy who filled up the stat sheet last year, 95 tackles over a year ago, 8 TFLs. Watch out for him as well, Carter Brock.
Yeah, best quarterbacks are the ones that can elevate the guys around them, right? Not just can get the balls in the hands of their best players, so to speak. That definitely helps, but also can elevate those guys and turn them into better players in turn. But to continue on this list, Oklahoma Baptist, 2-9 a year ago in 24. They lose as many as 5 starters on defense. The former All-American, we actually talked about Scooter Baker on this show, making the move over to Valdosta State. That's a huge loss for that defensive side of the ball. You don't see almost any reported incoming transfers. It's a little bit worrisome for a team that loses some spots, and you might need a couple key guys to come in and be impact players in day one. I don't know what the depth is at those different position groups currently on the roster. I have to do a little bit more of a deep dive, but some new faces on the coaching staff as well. You got outside hires at linebacker, running back, safeties, and quarterbacks. None of which were internal promotions. These aren't GAs assuming their own role and getting their own position group. These are all guys coming in from outside hires and candidates coming into this program for the first time. That can be really good. It can be really bad. You get some new perspective, new views. Also could take a little bit of time to learn how they operate. The running back, though, EJ Moore, he should be back in the offensive backfield this season. That's a key piece for this offensive attack. He led all rushers with almost 600 yards last year, 5 touchdowns. He's 6 foot, 225 pounds out of the offensive backfield. A guy that is pretty multifaceted. Seen him split them out, catching balls out of the backfield. He's got a good frame on him. Tyler Johnson, key returning piece for this defense. 57 tackles, 5.5 TFLs in his sophomore year. Could develop into what I think could even be an all-conference caliber player. 5'11", 225, big-time piece for that defense, Drew.
Yeah, absolutely. When you are able to bring in guys like that, then and have a couple returners, you never know what could happen. Even though you went 2-9 a season ago, guess what? Nobody cares. At the end of the day, it's 0-0, first game of the year. You're 0-0. You can win the national championship just as much as anybody. You can win your conference. So just because you went 2-9 last year doesn't really mean anything. It's a new season, new day. And that's exactly what I'm getting into.
Scary, promising thing about 0-0, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Like everyone at the start of the season is like, holy shit, we can go win the whole thing.
Absolutely. And like, obviously, some teams, you're not necessarily going to bet on them with, anything like with your own currency, but like why not us, right? Everyone says that, but
yes.
So that's how I see it. And so then going into another team that went 2-9 a season ago, Northwestern, Oklahoma State, per Athlink, 14 players in the portal that saw snaps last season. So, okay, what do? We're going to look to not necessarily go get a bunch of guys from the portal, but we're also going to have to eyes on the team currently step up. But one of the guys that they did go get from the portal from NAIA Bethany and Caleb Epperson, 39 tackles a season ago. He was an all-conference DB, 3 interceptions and 8 PBUs, so balls on the ground, or he's catching them as well, so that's a big deal. Also got a pair of DBs from D2 powerhouse Central Missouri, Justice Jones and Anthony Wilson. So it's like, hey, we brought in a bunch of experienced defensive backfield. So if you can figure out the pass rush or figure out the run stopping, you have experienced guys in the defensive end as far as the backfield is concerned. Great. Now, as far as offense is concerned, Brody Johnson is out. That was starting quarterback a season ago. Beck Moss, Caleb Deal, 2 guys competing for the job. And one thing that, we all know across sports, no matter if you like it or not, no matter if it's your buddy or not, iron sharpens iron, and you're going to get the best playmakers out of each other, right? Like, look at the guys in like that Oklahoma, since we're talking about Oklahoma, and I love Baker Mayfield, but like when you got guys like Kyler Murray right behind him, it's like, hey, I got to get better. You know what I mean? Because I know he can play, right? So it's that's how you get the best set of guys is from people always iron sharpens iron.
100%, man. To close that out, lose your top 3 tacklers from a year ago. That's a tough loss for any defense, especially this one, a team that has struggled in the bottom half of this conference. How do you get the leg up? For East Central, we talked about guys being in the summer and buying into that offseason program and conditioning. For a team like Northwestern, we talk about that defensive backfield. And you said it. If you can figure out some of the front end, you hope the back end can hold it down, right? Can you get yourself a couple of coverage sacks when you're locking up guys down the field, giving that front 6, that front 7 some time to get to the quarterback and develop a little bit of pressure. How do you scheme around a defensive backfield in a unit like that should anchor the defense for you? It doesn't help when you lose your top 3 tacklers, though, right? Redshirt sophomore Cade Reynolds should be a guy to watch for the fall. He might have to take on a very early leadership role. That's something that, as a redshirt, a very beneficial deal. You say redshirt sophomore going into this year, 1 year of playing under his belt, but of course had that redshirt year to physically develop. So he's out there ready to play and perform like an upperclassman. He has to be. For this team, he has to step into a larger leadership role and bring some other guys along with him, Drew.
Absolutely. Like we talked about, it doesn't matter if you're a freshman going to be a sophomore going to be a junior going to be a senior. There's guys that leave, and you're now that guy that feels that he has to up his level as far as leadership. You got to step up, right? At the end of the day, coaches are looking around like, who's going to be that guy? Doesn't matter what age you are.
Hell yeah, man. Sweet. I think you killed it, brother. I appreciate you. That's the GAC heading into 2025. Let us know who your pick is to win the conference. Of course, Harding, Ouachita have certainly been teams on top in very recent history. Southern Arkansas, Henderson State, teams that have been knocking on the door. Or will it be a dark horse? Will it be an underdog? Can East Central, can Arkansas Tech, can some of these other squads come up and take a leg up inside of the conference and help to maybe cannibalize a little bit and beat up on some of these other teams? Historically, it hasn't happened. But you look last year, that Southern Nazarene win over Ouachita, that was something that shook the D2 landscape. Can other teams replicate that kind of success? We shall see, my friend. Thank you for your time.
We'll see. Hey, don't forget about the Wonder Boys.
Don't forget. Hey, better not count them out. Coach Roy and company, they go have them boys right come fall, man. I'm excited about them.